On a rainy evening, Marc Renard's daughter vanished. The Marchioness was frantic, yet everyone believed it wouldn't take long to locate her. However, Arabella Renard never resurfaced. News of the Marc and Marchioness desperately searching for their daughter spread further than expected. Soon, countless imposter Arabellas began appearing at the mansion, each one a fresh disappointment. A child called the Marchioness, saying it was time for dinner. Yet, still tormented by her daughter's disappearance, the Marchioness could only tell Anita that, while she enjoyed all this luxury, she couldn't fathom the suffering Arabella must endure. Slowly, the Marchioness drifted farther from her other daughter. Even when Anita tried to get close, she met hostility. The Marchioness did not hesitate to declare that everything Anita had and enjoyed should belong to Arabella. After Arabella disappeared, the Marc and his wife were compelled to have another child to continue the lineage. That child was Anita. But because they had been forced to have her, they could not love her fully and felt even greater guilt over losing Arabella. Anita grew up surrounded by constant reminders. Her parents and the mansion's staff always spoke of Arabella. She heard comments like how Arabella would fit a dress better or that a certain color suited Arabella perfectly. In every way, Anita was either blamed for or compared to the missing sister, except by one person, Axon, son of Archduke Leod and Anita's fiancé. He was her sole friend. When another fake Arabella arrived and blamed her parents, Axon would invite Anita to his mansion for coffee. There, she felt recognized as herself, not just Arabella's sister or the girl who had taken everything from her. Then, after 19 years, the real Arabella returned. Verified by the imperial relic, her parents were overjoyed, everyone except Anita, who had long expected this day. What would become of her? The mansion descended into chaos. The Marchioness demanded everything be brighter and livelier for Arabella, fretted over her meals, and pampered her endlessly. Comparisons continued. Whenever the mother chose something for Arabella, she insisted it had to surpass anything Anita had. Arabella was repeatedly labeled the rightful owner of the family's wealth and treasures. Discussions even arose about breaking off Anita's engagement to the Archduke's son, though the parents were unsure how since the Archduke himself had proposed. Anita was never named. She was always referred to as the daughter of Marc Renard. The Marchioness was determined Arabella, not Anita, would marry into the Archduke's family, claiming it was only fair. The Marc supported her, agreeing that Arabella was the rightful lady of the house while Anita should remain home to manage family affairs. Outside, Anita overheard all of this chaos. The next day, Anita was with Axon, who noticed her distraction. She apologized, explaining she had been busy, missing a few of his suggested outings. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Axon asked if she expected someone, and she said no, but the knocking persisted. Asking permission, she opened the door to find her mother and Arabella. Her mother insisted Anita introduce Arabella to Lord Axon. Anita knew exactly what was being attempted but no longer cared if they took everything from her. One thing she refused to surrender was Axon. She would protect him at all costs. Unable to comply, she asked him to wait, closing the door and refusing to introduce her sister. Her mother was shocked and furious. Arabella tried to persuade their mother, but the woman insisted Anita was selfish. Anita cut her off, arguing that pity could not justify barging into her afternoon tea with Axon, as it would be disrespectful. Arabella, overwhelmed, fainted in front of them, shifting her mother's attention entirely. Nervous, Anita ran to fetch a doctor. On the way, she collided with a maid carrying a vase of flowers. Explaining Arabella had fainted, the maid panicked and immediately called for medical help. Anita recalled that on the day Arabella returned, a doctor had deemed her healthy, so how could she collapse suddenly? Returning to the reception room, Anita noticed the door closed and empty. It dawned on her. Perhaps this was part of Arabella's plan. Inside, Axon was confused. Arabella, acting sweet, apologized for interrupting, assuring him Anita would return shortly. Axon barely paid attention, waiting patiently. Arabella had expected this would be easy, assuming his politeness would make him approachable, but he seemed intimidating. She thought Anita must be shocked by her sudden appearance and would return quickly. Indeed, as soon as Arabella regained consciousness, she immediately inquired after Anita. But her mother told her not to worry, insisting it was perfect and that she should simply enter the room and introduce herself to Lord Axon. Arabella tried to ask, "What do you mean? I'm just walking in out of nowhere, and where is my sister?" But her mother pressed on, assuring her that Anita would return soon. Arabella realized this put her in an awkward position, confirming what Anita had said earlier, that it was somewhat rude and he might be annoyed with her for barging in and introducing herself. She wanted to flee, yet remembered her parents insisting she make a good impression on the Archduke's son and that he needed to like her. She took a deep breath and apologized for any discomfort caused. He calmly responded that she had no reason to apologize, knowing she had not orchestrated this unexpected meeting. Then she realized he might have overheard the yelling outside. Before she could ponder further, he added that, as she said, Anita would return soon. He smiled toward the door, and Arabella noticed he seemed to share a special connection with Anita. Outside, Anita still lingered, thinking Arabella had orchestrated everything to make her look foolish and to talk to Axion, exactly as her mother intended. As she stepped inside, Arabella approached and apologized for making her worry. But Anita still believed her sister had engineered the situation. Arabella smiled brightly, held Anita's hand, and asked where she had been, saying they had been waiting. Looking at Axion, Anita suggested she should take her leave. Arabella, delighted, asked if she could really go and thanked her, admitting she had been a little scared to stay. Smiling, she left, wishing them a good day. Anita found it strange. Arabella had always struggled in her early life due to poverty, while she had grown up with luxuries. Yet now, Arabella seemed far happier and more excited than she did. Once Arabella departed, Anita turned to Axion and apologized for her mother's chaos. He simply smiled, saying it was no problem. Still uneasy, she apologized again, noting she might need to end their meeting for the day. Axion agreed, stood, and mentioned he would invite her to his mansion next time, clearly signaling for her to leave this madness. He confirmed he would send the invitation tomorrow afternoon. Anita felt joy, recognizing this as a way to keep her safe from the mistreatment she had endured since Arabella's return. Later, at dinner, the monk asked if the food pleased Bella. She thanked him, and her mother urged her to eat more, noting she was very thin. Bella noticed Anita was only eating salad, no meat, and asked if her sister was controlling her weight, though it seemed unnecessary. Before Anita could respond, her mother interrupted, claiming Anita had never eaten much and that Bella needed to eat more and gain weight. The monk agreed, saying she needed more nutrients. Bella apologized for mentioning it, but her parents insisted she wasn't at fault. They had lived in abundance while Arabella went hungry. They tried to involve Anita, but her silence made them scorn her. The monk then scolded her for treating her sister poorly while enjoying excess. Calmly, Anita finished her salad, saying, "While I understand your guilt over Arabella's upbringing, please do not use me as a tool for your remorse." This enraged both parents. Her father yelled, but before it escalated, Anita stood and left, letting them continue their household theatrics. Despite their calls for her to return, she walked away without looking back. Nervous, Arabella accidentally dropped her plate. Her mother told her husband not to shout at the table, as it frightened Arabella. Arabella apologized for spilling her food, but everyone reassured her it wasn't her fault. They only worried about whether Anita's words had hurt her feelings. The mother then asked if her husband would allow Anita to go unpunished. Quickly, he ordered a maid to summon Anita to his office in an hour. Knowing she had an hour before meeting her father, and that he would fawn over Arabella for at least 2 hours, Anita decided to read a book about the empire's founding. It wasn't thrilling, but she enjoyed it, especially the parts about Lake Alcanti, the spirit animal said to have helped the first emperor establish the empire and originating from that lake. For some reason, just thinking about that lake lifts Anita's spirits. Mainly because it reminds her of someone she met there. In her childhood, she rescued a young woman from the lake and, upon leaving, came face to face with a boy whose eyes mirrored the water. 8 years ago, during an afternoon tea, several young noble women were chatting. Among them was Anita Renard, then only 9. One girl asked why Anita had been staring at the lake the whole time. Was she bored? That was Rachel So, eldest daughter of the Count of Soery. Anita tried to explain she was paying attention, but Swa asked what she had just heard. Anita realized she had been daydreaming while the others spoke. Still, she had been listening and repeated exactly what they were discussing. Miss Soery asking about a flower called Robena, known for a fragrance as strong as its beauty. Soery was embarrassed to see that Anita had indeed been attentive. Anita simply wanted to leave the boring gathering. The park behind Lake Alcanti was a common meeting place for noble women, mainly for afternoon tea, and that's why Anita had joined them, so she could get closer to the lake. A voice spoke to her, noting that the girl kept staring and suggesting she might try to befriend her. But Anita thought to herself that they didn't truly want her friendship. They wanted access to her family. The voice, telepathic, belonged to a low-level spirit only she could see. She had met it 2 years ago near Lake Alcanti and realized that whenever she was near the lake, she could hear it. That was why she often visited. She had never told anyone, fearing her parents might exploit her to find Arabella. The fact that only she could hear and speak to the spirit intrigued her. Before she could think further, the voice warned that someone had fallen into the lake. Anita asked if there was anyone nearby to help, but the spirit said no. The person was losing consciousness and needed immediate assistance. Concerned, Anita thought of telling the girls they should take a walk, but that would take too long and the person might not survive. Without hesitation, she said she would walk by the lake and dashed off. The spirit guided her to the location, but Anita couldn't see anyone, likely too deep underwater. Despite her fear, she removed her shoes and asked the spirit to summon help. The shoes would mark her location. The spirit tried to stop her from entering the water, giving contradictory instructions, but Anita ignored it and jumped in. She saw a blonde woman sinking beneath the surface. As she reached her, she realized the woman was heavy and she might not lift her alone. Fearing she might drown too, she worried if help would arrive in time. Suddenly, a pillar of water lifted them both to the surface. Several people ran over, concerned. The young woman Anita had rescued was Archduchess led. As the servants fussed, a voice introduced himself, Ashin leered, thanking her and saying he didn't know how he could repay her. That was Anita's first encounter with Ashin, saving his mother. She wondered if she had even said her name, yet somehow he discovered it and later sent her a letter. After some time in the library, she decided to head to her father's office. Her parents were again arguing loudly, and Anita arrived just in time to overhear. They discussed Arabella's fainting, noting the doctor could not determine the cause. They insisted Anita's engagement to the Archduke must be broken immediately. If rumors spread about Arabella's health, she would never have a chance to marry him. The Mark suggested perhaps Arabella could marry the prince instead. The Marchioness opposed it, knowing the prince was cruel, experienced with women, and that it might lead to the same ruin as the Empress's family. Rejecting the prince, they felt compelled to compensate Arabella for lost time. The Mark concocted a plan: attract the Empress's attention to Anita, making her appear a suitable match for the prince, thereby breaking her engagement to the Archduke and giving an excuse to reject the prince. In truth, their concern was their own future, not Anita's. Anita realized that despite all she had done for her family, they didn't care about her. She could not understand why her father treated her this way. She knew the engagement to the Archduke had been offered to the family, yet her father seemed to forget it was because she had saved the Archduchess. She wondered if he believed she would remain obedient and loyal despite all this. Absurd, since no one truly considered her part of the Renaud family. She didn't look like them, though she shared brown hair and red eyes with the Mark. Still, her lineage was doubted. After Arabella's return, who resembled her mother, rumors worsened. Lost in thought, Anita overheard the maids gossiping, saying Lady Arabella was the image of her parents while Lady Anita did not resemble them at all and might not even be noble. Anita caught them, causing panic. She commanded them to leave immediately and told her mother the servants had spoken ill of their masters. They begged forgiveness, but Anita paid no mind and stormed out. She felt her rightful place in the mansion, and everything she had, including Axion, was at risk. She resolved she would not allow it. Later in her room, someone knocked. She called them in. Her personal maid, Hare, entered, reporting that Rick Elmont of the Knights of Lade was in the mansion. Hare treated Anita well, mainly because Anita always rewarded her generously. At that moment, she gave Hare a hairpin for the valuable information. Unlike the other servants, who blindly served Arabella, Hare found it odd. How could Arabella be so innocent when she had grown in poverty? She feels a surge of excitement at seeing Mr. Elmont, who is equally pleased to see her again. He hands her a letter, and Anita expresses how glad she is to see him, especially after his return from the northern regions, though she hadn't expected him to be the one delivering the invitation. He explains that he came precisely to see Lady Anita. She invites him to join her for tea and asks how things went in the northern region. He explains that, although it was a minor dispute, he still hasn't acclimated to the cold there. The northern regions are notorious across the empire for their freezing climate. Even midsummer feels like early winter, leaving the soil nearly barren. However, the rich mines in the area often spark conflicts over territory. Normally, the emperor would settle such disputes, but since it's the northern region, he sends the emperor. Hence, there was no reason for them to refuse. Returning to the present, Anita wonders if they have found the item yet. She asks Elmont if he will return to the Archduke's territory now that he is back. He replies that he must first report to the emperor. Before he can continue, someone starts shouting, asking if anyone from the Lakely family is present and why they weren't informed. Of course, it is her dramatic mother banging at the door, demanding to speak with Anita. Anita tells her to enter, and with all her flair, the Marchioness asks why Anita didn't mention their guest. Elmont politely greets her. She is surprised that the vice commander of the Lakely army personally delivered the invitation and apologizes for her daughter's trouble. Elmont graciously replies that it is no trouble and any knight would be happy to serve Miss Anita. Realizing it may not be easy to separate them, her mother comments she didn't know Anita was so close to the Archduke's soldiers. Elmont replies that it is not just the soldiers. Everyone in the Lakeide household holds Anita in high regard since she saved the Archduchess. The Marchioness immediately dismisses it, claiming it happened 8 years ago and only the doctor ensured the Archduchess survived, not Anita. Elmont shoots her appointed look, silently questioning her claim. Ignoring him, she moves to the invitation letter, attempting to grab it. Anita is faster, apologizing and saying she hasn't read it yet and it would be rude for anyone else to do so. She opens it then and notices a delightful scent of roses. Ashian had included petals. The invitation reads, "Dear Anita, I invite you to join me for afternoon tea in the garden of the lake at estate. In 1 week, I will be delighted by your presence. Your friend, Ashian." Smiling, Anita tells Elmont she will attend and he may inform Ashian. Meanwhile, her mother schemes to have Arabella accompany Anita, convinced the Archduchess will see how suitable Arabella is as a match. She begins laying out her plan, claiming Arabella lacked social opportunities while Anita has always had them. Anita doesn't argue. Her mother's desperation to make Arabella Ashian's fiancé is painfully clear, and she decides it's not worth her energy. To her mother's delight, Anita says she doesn't mind taking Arabella, though she's unsure if Arabella will agree. The Marchioness, thrilled, asks Elmont if that's possible, and he confirms it is, though he must leave to report to the imperial palace. Once he departs, her mother confronts Anita about dismissing some maids, including her personal maid. Anita responds coolly that they spoke ill of their masters and could not be trusted. Her mother insists she cannot dismiss them without asking. Faking concern, Anita says it was for her mother's own good, since such servants usually leak information. Annoyed, the Marchioness lets it drop, shifting to more pressing matters. Arabella will visit the Empress in 10 days and Anita must accompany her. But Anita knows her mother's plan, to have the Empress declare her the ideal bride for the prince, risking the termination of her engagement to Ashian. Anita suggests seeking the Empress's permission first, but her mother has already secured it and reminds her that the engagement was meant for Arabella, not her. Later, at the Lade mansion, Ashian and his mother converse over tea. She mentions his recent visit to Anita and wonders if her household still treats her poorly. He confirms nothing has changed. Recalling when Anita said she wanted to travel far when she came of age, the Archduchess had offered her a chance to stay at the Lade mansion until her majority. Anita had refused, citing her obligations. In the present, the Archduchess regrets not having insisted, as it would have saved her earlier. Ashian asks if she is worried. She clarifies it is regret, not worry. That night, Anita eats alone, her mother forbidding her to leave the room. Just yesterday, they insisted on family meals for Arabella, yet they changed their minds swiftly. A knock at her door introduces Philip, the butler, informing her that Lord Renaud wants her in his office. Rising, she notices Philip looks troubled. She asks why, and he warns that her father will likely give her more work. She agrees it is likely. The butler, indignant at her young age and workload, is cut off by Anita, who tells him not to jeopardize his career. Her father would likely dismiss him before payment if he heard Philip's complaints. The butler felt deeply moved by Lady Anita's rare combination of competence and kindness, believing he must stay in the mansion and could never be dismissed, as he considered her his true mistress. Upon reaching her father's office, Anita saw the stack of papers on his desk. He instructed her to take all of them, remarking that since she would be home all day instead of attending social events, she could probably finish them in 4 days. Anita noted that ever since Arabella's return, her father had actively prevented her from participating in society, always finding ways to give her more work while disguising it as if it were her own fault. From the age of 12, Anita had assisted her father in managing the mansion and its lands. 10 years had passed since she decided she would sever ties with her family upon coming of age, having realized there was no place for her in the Reynard household. Still, she had always considered it her duty to remain a member and assist with administration until then, which explained why she had obeyed her father's requests without complaint. Today, however, she recognized that this tedious work was simply what her parents avoided doing themselves. Seeing her silence, her father asked why she hadn't responded, calling the task easy enough for anyone, and mockingly questioned whether she feared it might be too difficult. Anita's immediate thought, what anyone in her place would think, was, "If it's so simple, why don't you do it yourself?" Naturally, he erupted, insisting she couldn't see he was assigning the work for her own good. Inspired, she replied that her mother had never handled any administrative duties, and it would likely be the same in the Lackard family. In a fit of frustration, her father threw the papers into the air, declaring he was fed up, insisting that at 17 she was old enough to manage all family paperwork. Anita refused, pointing out that Ashian, unlike her father, was capable of handling such responsibilities as head of the family, and suggested he do the work intended for that role himself. He became furious, claiming she couldn't act so boldly just because Arabella had returned and demanded she go to her room to reflect. Anita retorted that she was already planning to do so and slammed the door behind her, leaving her father seething and wondering how much longer he could tolerate such an ungrateful girl.